deoxygenated blood flowing into the inferior vena cava. Wish I could get that off there. The superior vena cava and the coronary sinus into the right atria. Atria receive. It will then drop down the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Right ventricle will pump out the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary arteries. Those will go to the lungs, where we will get oxygen, and oxygenated blood will now return by pulmonary vein into the left atria. Goes down the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle, which is the thickest myocardium because it pumps all this oxygenated blood to the body through the aortic valve and the aorta. We have the brachiocephalic vessel, or it's an artery, left common carotid artery, left subclavian artery. Those are all the ones that are touched. You can kind of see the coronary artery up here, right coronary artery. But that's everything that's actually attached to it. Oh, an interventricular septum, right? The area of the myocardium between the two ventricles. I think that's about it for that one. Anybody have a question on that one? Then we will go to the lungs. So first off with the lungs, remember we had 3 lobes on the right, 2 on the left. You can see the 2 on this one divided here. The right side has a horizontal and oblique fissure. But we're going to be looking at all the ways the air comes down, and then this is an alveoli where we have the gas exchange. So, let's see. Air enters through the nose, right? We goes to the back of the shared tube, which is the nasopharynx, down past the oropharynx, down to the laryngopharynx, which is going to be where your Adam's apple is and your voice box, and then down the trachea. So if we use this guy here, this is your trachea. Here's your, what do you call it, thyroid cartilage with the larynx and voice box inside. We have the right main bronchi and the left main bronchi. Yes, you need to know right versus left. Remember, the right side's going to have 3, so it's going to have more extensions on it. The left only has 2. So main bronchi. Then we have the lobar, also known as secondary, and then you have the tertiary or segmentals on the end. And I forgot to say the primary and the main are the same thing. Okay. Primary, main, lobar, secondary, tertiary, segmental. Lobar, tertiary. Everybody good with that? Okay. And then ends in the alveoli, which is anything that looks like that, right? That's where gas exchange happens. So any of those models. All right. Anybody have a question on this? And of course, that can be on anything that's got the half head, where they can go through the pharynx and those structures, or this particular one here. Right. Let's do some neuro. What was this? Anybody?
Ventricles.
Ventricles, good. So the ventricles of the brain with the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid that goes through them, they were named lateral. We have 2 lateral ventricles. Third has the hole in it. Fourth is at the end, the tip down here. Okay, that's how they're named. Lateral, third, fourth. And this is the little aqueduct that goes down it. The only other place you would see that one is on the half head model, where you can see the 4th ventricle here in that little triangle behind the pons and the cerebellum. Be the 4th ventricle. But typically, that's better. So all other things you can find on this model would be the diencephalon region, the corpus callosum along the top here, the pituitary gland, which is the little gland that's on the nose side. Right above that will be the dip for your hypothalamus, or the big bump for your thalamus. And then if you go down to the back, the other little pink gland will be the pineal gland. And of course, there can be hormone questions because these are endocrine, right? Let's see, cerebellum. Pons is the big bump. It's part of the brainstem. Medulla is that one there. Midbrain would be that little gap. But then everything else is spinal cord. Yeah. Any questions on that? So we do kind of have a brain here today. Remember, you need to know the lobes of the brain. Frontal. Frontal is your motor cortex. Parietal. This one's not colorable, but parietal. Somatosensory. Temporal. Auditory. Occipital. Visual. And then cerebellum is like the balance. Good? Got your neuron. Here we're concerned more, we're not looking for organelles anymore, we're looking at the structure of the neuron. So we have the dendrites, which would be the hard bumps out here. The little spongy guys are terminal knobs. Terminal knobs from, terminal knobs from another neuron. Nucleus. Axon hillock, which is your trigger zone. Schwann cells, right, the myelination. And then the nodes of Ranvier, divide those. Sodium injects in those, right? And this is our myelinated axon. The axon goes down the center, so we can have that nice, fast saltatory conduction. There's also a nucleus, right? And a bunch of mitochondria in there. Question? And we've got this guy right here. So the gray matter, right, the horns, dorsal, ventral, or sorry, posterior, anterior. So the bump on the back is going to be that dorsal root ganglion. And all posterior information is what kind? Sensory or motor?
Sensory.
Sensory, good. So this posterior root ganglion or dorsal root ganglion is going to be sensory. Sensory in the posterior horns. And so motor for the anterior horns. Motor coming out the anterior root. That's about it for that. Yeah. External auditory canal, right? Sound waves get directed in. They're going to vibrate against the tympanic membrane, also known as your eardrum. We've got the three ossicles, the malleus, incus, and then the stapes, right, that vibrates and resonates. On the stapes, here, we have the cochlea, which was the snail shape. That's your organ for hearing. The semicircular canals, or for balance equilibrium. And you have cranial nerve 8 in there. And auditory tube or eustachian tube, which is going to balance out that pressure for your ear. Where did I go? There. Have the cornea, that hard protective outer shell. The colored iris. The pupil would be a hole in the center. On the back side, we have the lens that would move to refract light. And the place we want to direct that light, can I see that eye? Can I see anything? The place we want to direct that, that's fine, is, that's the same one. All right, the fovea centralis, which will be a dot kind of off to the side. And I gotta find another one that has it. This is not very well described. But it's not the center here where the artery and nerve come in, because that's your optic disc. That's your blind spot. It's an opening. It'll be a dot off to the side. Fovea centralis. That's where your rods and cones are. What do rods and cones do? Help you see, right? Photoreception, remember that? That's how you see. So the lens will refract light onto the back of the retina and the fovea centralis with the rods and cones. And that's where we see.